The Disappeared, Part 2, Eduardo. Sylvia, dear sister, your face was the last thing I saw before they put on the hood. That glimpse of you is with me. In my heart, I will tell you everything, and the telling will give me strength. They've thrown me into the car and pushed me onto the floor, slamming their feet on my back to keep me down. I'm trying to guess where we're heading, to remember the turns we make, to count the minutes. But terror crowds out thought and memory. The hood is kept on all the while, so I see nothing. They refer to me as El Perro. I am no more than a dog to them, but their wish not to be recognized gives me hope. Perhaps they know the day will come when they will be held accountable for their deeds. I am dragged from the car and into a building whose stone walls are cold when I stumble against them. They throw me into a room with the smell of unwashed bodies and filthy toilets. It is the smell of terror. My hood is removed and an iron door slammed shut. The sound is of my world ending. Everything I care about is on the other side of that door. I know where I am. I'm in the country of fear. Here is the world in which I live. There is a narrow cot, and in the corner of the room, a tin bucket. A single light bulb hangs from the ceiling and is always turned on. At first, the light is comforting, and then it is a weapon. Every hour, a slot in the door opens and someone peers in at me. I can see my own fear reflected in their eyes. There are screams from a nearby room. How brave will I be when it is my turn in that room? At this moment, I do not feel brave. My clothes are damp with sweat. I lose the strength to stand up, and I sink down on my cot. I think of you, Sylvia. You warned me. You were afraid this would happen. But how can I have done otherwise? We can't live in a country where everyone is suspected and everyone is at risk. They tell writers what they can put in their books. They say this book must go and that one. A book that tells the truth about what is happening to Argentina is not allowed. Over and over, I see the terrible day they came into my own Department of Experimental Psychology. I was busy cleaning the cages of the mice, for Professor Bustamante was particular about the welfare of our animals. They had to be healthy and happy so they could run properly through the maze. It was a late afternoon on Friday, and I was eager for the weekend. Your birthday was the next day, and I planned to wander through the antique stores in San Telmo to see if I could pick up a bit of the Art Deco jewelry you like so much. Bustamante was short and a little fat, with a boyish face so innocent-looking that when he walked about the lab complaining loudly about our carelessness, it was impossible to take him seriously. He did not even take his own temper tantrum seriously, for in the middle of a tirade he would begin to laugh at himself, and he was tenderness itself with the little mice. He called them his favoritos, and fed them bits of cheese he brought from home. It pained him to give someone a poor grade, and on this day he was apologizing to one of the students for having awarded him a low test score. It's for your own good, so that you will make an effort to improve, he pleaded. At that moment, a soldier strode into the laboratory. He stood there and stared at the little white mice, snug in their cages. Pointing to the maze, he asked, Professor Bustamante, "What is that?" "It's a maze," the professor said. "I would be glad to explain its workings to you." Though he was surprised to find a soldier in his lab, he was such a friendly man, I could see he was trying to make the young stranger feel at home. I could do nothing but stand there watching, wondering what would happen next, and what I could do if it was something bad. The soldier examined the water bottles and the pellets of food we gave the mice. He said, "You psychologists tinker with minds. You tell them what to think and what not to think. You influence thoughts." He walked over to the professor's untidy desk and began to rifle through his papers. He read out the title of a research paper, The Effect of Age on Directional Cognition. "First it is mice, but soon it is people," he said. He found a copy of a study from a Russian university among Professor Bustamante's papers. "What is this Russian propaganda?" the soldier demanded. The professor explained. In the Russian university, young Russian mice and then older Russian mice are running through a maze as our mice do. The Russians are studying the results just as we are. The paper has nothing to do with Russian politics. The soldier refused to believe him. Then, with the students staring helplessly, the soldier took Bustamante away. I will never forget the little gesture of apology he made to us students, and his distraught look, a look that said, in a second, his world had been turned upside down. Without warning, my professor had become one of the Despreciados. Eduardo, you told me, forget about Bustamante. His disappearance had nothing to do with you. Your protest will only get you into trouble. But you did not know Bustamante as I did. He had always trusted everyone, and now he will never trust again. After that, I began to stand in front of the university with the others who were demonstrating against his disappearance. There were a dozen of us, and we were all afraid. Maria and Caesar and Ramon stood with me. Ramon's father was one of the disappeared, and at the sight of the two soldiers who were posted at the university's entrance to watch us, Ramon's whole body would tremble. The soldiers would observe us just as we continued to observe the mice do their tricks in our lab. As we were in charge of the mice, the soldiers were in charge of us. I told Caesar, we are not doing enough. A few of us students decided to look about for something more effective to do and joined a group of union workers demonstrating at a nearby factory. Their leader had been kidnapped by the generals and members of their shop committees arrested. At first, the workers would have nothing to do with us because we were only students from the middle class and not compañeros. They suspected us of being spies for the government. Still, we came every day, proud of protesting with grown men and women. You are little innocents, they said. You wear blue jeans like you are working men, though you have never done a day's work. They teased us in a friendly way, just as they made fun of one another, so that we would laugh to cover our fear. They were just learning to trust us when Ramon Fratelli disappeared. I had been worried about my friend, for the police are like the hawk who singles out the weakest creature to pounce upon. I understood Ramon's fear. I had learned the details about his father when I stopped by Ramon's house one day to tell him the time of a demonstration. Ramon was not at home, but his mother and his sister Teresa invited me in for a cool drink. They told me that Signor Fratelli was a reporter who had disappeared mysteriously while covering an investigation of the corruption in the government's awarding of contracts. The Fratellis, like many in Buenos Aires, were of Italian rather than Spanish descent. The mother was a large, comfortable woman who was clearly the rock of the family. She accepted the disappearance of her husband as one would accept an earthquake or a typhoon, enduring while questioning neither man nor God. Suffering, Sylvia, as you and mother and father must now be suffering. Ramon's sister was delicate with a pale face and long dark hair. Her eyes were large and fringed with sooty lashes. She had the look of a fairy creature peering out from amongst the trees in some enchanted forest. Unlike Signora Fratelli, she appeared to be looking everywhere for answers, terrified that she might find them. Impulsively, I put an arm around her shoulder. I wanted to protect her, to keep her from harm. For just a moment, I questioned the risk Ramon was taking when he had the responsibility for his mother and sister. But then I told myself nothing could be more important than fighting against what was happening to our country. The Signora said, Eduardo, I beg you to find a way to stop my son from all this political activity. After what has happened to Signor Fratelli, the police will have their eye on Ramon. He is a sensitive boy, and I see how he suffers with anxiety. He feels he must do what his father did. I have lost my husband. It would kill me to lose my son as well. Teresa laid her hand, as light as a leaf, on my arm. I know that you are his friend. Is there no way you can keep him from this foolishness? It's a danger to all of you. But I had not listened to my family, and I did not listen to the Fratellis. A week later, when Ramon did not turn up to demonstrate with us, I went at once to the Fratelli home and found his mother turned to stone and Teresa in tears. Teresa said, last night, just before midnight, a carload of soldiers broke down our door and took Ramon away. We have asked everywhere, but no one will talk with us. Everyone is afraid. Her mother was beyond speech. My friend was in the hands of the generals, and we would all be suspected now. Of all of us, Ramon was the most easily intimidated. I guessed he would be so terrified. He would not long hold out against torture. He would begin to tell who his comrades were. I tried to comfort the Fratellis. It was most likely a mistake. After a few questions, Ramon is sure to be returned. The Signora wanted to believe me, as one believes in many things one knows are false, but Teresa said nothing, only crying silently, her face turned away so her mother would not see her tears. That next week, 2 of the students and 1 of the leaders of the union strike were arrested. I waited for my own arrest, or that of Maria or Caesar, but nothing happened. Had Ramon betrayed some but not others? I told Maria and Caesar of my concerns. We were ashamed for Ramon, yet we did not know if under torture we might not do the same. I wanted to believe. I would be brave. Now, as I listen in my cell to cries of pain, I have little faith in my courage. Maria, Caesar, and I gave thanks that so far we had been spared, and we continued to demonstrate with the workers even though we knew that at any moment the police might come for us. Some among the union leaders frightened me. I guess their belief in their cause came less from conviction than hate for those in authority. They whispered among themselves so that we students could not hear. One of them made friends with me. I was pleased when he first approached me. Now I call him the Jackal, for he was an animal who with his bloodthirsty schemes existed on carrion, the dead and decaying flesh of his victims. The others seemed to separate themselves from the Jackal, but I felt superior that one of the union leaders had made a comrade of me. After one of our demonstrations, he invited me to join him for a coffee, so I went along, swaggering a little. I had been singled out as someone to be trusted. When Maria and Caesar warned me about the man, I thought they were jealous. The Jackal took me to a little cafe near the factory. A waiter with a surly manner poured the coffee into dirty cups and wandered off. The Jackal said, "Tell me a little about yourself. How did you come to be involved in our demonstrations?" "You could be off having a good time like the rest of the students." No, I'm not interested in a meaningless life. I want to help my country. I want to get rid of the generals and bring democracy back to Argentina." Eagerly, I told him, "I am one of you, a true compañero. I have demonstrated at the university, and I write articles about the cruelty of the generals and how their government must be overturned." "And what do you do with these essays?" he asked. He asked it casually, as if it did not matter to him one way or the other. "Of course, at present they can't be published because of the censorship, but one day they will be." I was very proud of what I had written. "I'd be interested in reading them," he said. This surprised me, for I had thought the Jackal, a man who would reach for knives and guns before he would turn to words. I went on talking about myself and our family, not noticing the Jackal's silence about himself. When I paused for a breath, he said, "I saw at once you were smarter than your fellow students and more dedicated to our cause. How would you like to take on a very special, very secret mission for us?" I was excited. "Yes, of course," I agreed. "I will do anything." Even more gratifying, he said, "Let me have those articles you say you have written. I'd like to keep them for a day or two and show them to a friend who prints an underground newspaper. They're exactly what the man is looking for." I did not like having the articles out of my hands, but I was flattered, and I promised to bring them to him at once. "One more thing," he said. "You must stop the demonstrating. We need you to be away from the eyes of the police. Say nothing, do nothing. Wait until you are contacted." I was full of importance. I thought of myself as a secret agent. When Caesar asked, "How come you aren't coming to demonstrate today?" I made up a story about how my family had finally convinced me to give up the protests. When I saw I had fallen in his eyes, I could not help but give him a hint. "Anyhow, there are more important jobs to be done, but I can't talk about them." Caesar was impressed. As the days went on, I waited eagerly for someone to contact me, wondering what the crucial task I would be called upon to perform. When I saw the other students demonstrating, talking about what they had done and what they would do next, I felt left out. At home, Sylvia, you noticed that I no longer went with Caesar and Maria, and you were relieved and pleased. You thought I had listened to you and father and mother. At last, the Jackal summoned me to the small, out-of-the-way cafe where we had gone before. He announced, "Eduardo, the time has come for your important mission." My heart raced. Finally, I would begin. Finally, I would make a difference. What am I to do? The Jackal said, "We have learned of a friend of yours. Ramon Fratelli, who was picked up by the soldiers, has named his comrades." Ramon was seen in a car with soldiers pointing out not only students, but one of the leaders of our union. We can't let that go unpunished. But Ramon is in prison, I said. I couldn't imagine a greater punishment. Ah, but his family is not, the jackal said. I didn't understand. There is only his mother and sister. His father has disappeared. At once I was on my guard, thinking of Teresa. Why was he talking of the Fratellis? We need to send a lesson to informers that betrayal will have consequences. I still didn't follow him. You want me to tell his family what Ramon has done? I could not punish them like that. That would be a very weak lesson. We have something else in mind. There was a look of excitement in the jackal's eyes, as if a wish dear to him was about to be granted. You know the family, don't you? You have been in their home? Yes, of course. He was one of us. It did not occur to me to wonder how he knew this. Soon it would be obvious they had been watching me. Ramon's family trusts you? Yes, I suppose so. Yes, of course. I am sure they trust me. It was wrenching to think of what Ramon's family must be going through. What he did in betraying his friends was a terrible thing, but it wasn't his family's fault. I told the jackal that. This is a war, he said. There will always be innocent victims. That is the nature of war. I picked you out because I thought you understood such things. I could hardly take his words in. What was he asking of me? Tell me what you want me to do. You have only to deliver a package. There will be no danger to you and no one to connect you with what will happen. I could barely get the words out. You are asking me to take a bomb into the Fratelli's house? You told me you were serious about defeating the generals. I took you at your word. I thought you understood that to destroy them we must be as strong as they are. Instead, I find you are only a child, a timid pretender. Ramon's betrayal has put us into the hands of the enemy. We must make an example of him. We can't have our people telling all that they know when they are arrested. But if it will protect a mother or a sister, they will find the strength to endure torture. You want us to fight terror by becoming terrorists ourselves? You can call me a coward. I would never do such a thing. I think you will. Never. I was a fool to believe I had been singled out because I was superior in some way. They had simply guessed how easily I would be flattered, how anxious I was for their approval. If I do what you want, our side will be as bad as the generals. Then Argentina would suffer under two evils, one against the other, with nothing to choose between. The jackal became livid. Don't be one of those idiots who believe the end does not justify the means. You are in an army now and you must follow orders. You have no choice. I do have a choice. Then my choice would be to turn over your articles to the generals so that they can see just what you think of their government. How could I have been so stupid not to see this trap he had set for me? I was furious with him and with myself. Even worse, Ramon's betrayal came after torture. My betrayal was the result of my conceit and self-importance. Whichever way I turned, I faced danger and threat. The jackal was watching me, but what he didn't see, dear sister, and what you would have known at once, was that I would die before I did what he wished.